I'm Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. For most of my life, I believed that love meant sacrifice, that being the responsible daughter meant accepting less so others could have more. I thought financial inequality within families was normal, that parents naturally invested differently in different children based on practical considerations. I was wrong about all of that, and discovering the truth nearly destroyed me before it set me free. The story I'm about to share isn't just about a $30 jacket or credit card shopping sprees. It's about a systematic pattern of financial manipulation that took me years to recognize and even longer to escape. If you've ever felt like the family member who gets the scraps while others feast, if you've been told you're selfish for wanting equal treatment, or if you've wondered whether your worth to your family is measured purely in what you cost versus what you contribute, this story is for you. The jacket incident happened when I was 16, but the roots of that moment stretched back to my earliest memories. My sister Emma is 2 years younger than me, and from the time she could walk, she was the princess of our household. I don't mean that as an exaggeration or a bitter metaphor. I mean that my parents literally called her Princess Emma, bought her princess costumes for regular Tuesday afternoons, and treated her preferences as royal decrees that governed our entire family's decisions. When Emma was 4 and I was 6, we went to a toy store where she spotted a $150 dollhouse. She pointed at it and said she wanted it, and my father immediately began examining it like he was considering a serious purchase. I had been asking for a $20 art set for months, mentioning it every time we passed the craft aisle, but my parents always redirected the conversation or explained why we needed to wait. That day, I watched my father carry the dollhouse to the checkout counter while explaining to me that I could pick out a $5 coloring book if I wanted. I remember standing there holding that coloring book, trying to understand the mathematics of love that made Emma's want worth 30 times more than mine. My mother saw my confusion and knelt down to explain that Emma was smaller and needed more special things to make her happy, that I was the big sister and should understand these kinds of sacrifices. I accepted this explanation because I was 6 years old and trusted that my parents understood something about fairness that I didn't yet grasp. But the pattern continued to evolve as we grew older. When Emma turned 8, she wanted to take dance classes at an expensive studio across town. The classes cost $300 per month, plus costumes, competition fees, and travel expenses for recitals. My parents enrolled her immediately and spent the next 4 years driving her to practice 5 days a week, attending every performance, and converting our living room into a shrine of dance trophies and photographs. When I expressed interest in joining the school newspaper in 7th grade, which required a $25 annual fee for supplies, my father asked me to justify why I needed to spend money on something that wouldn't lead to a scholarship or career. The financial disparity became more sophisticated as we entered high school. Emma needed designer clothes because she was developing her sense of style and confidence. I received hand-me-downs from cousins and clearance rack items that my mother selected without my input. Emma needed a car for her 16th birthday because she had so many activities and social commitments. I rode the bus and walked, often carrying Emma's forgotten homework or sports equipment to her when she called from school in tears. The credit card revelation happened during my junior year of high school, just 2 months after the jacket incident that would later become a symbol of everything wrong with our family's financial dynamics. I had been working a part-time job at a local bookstore for 8 months, saving money for college application fees and a car. I had found a jacket at a department store that I loved. Nothing extravagant, just a simple black jacket that cost $30 and made me feel confident and put together. I had the money from my own paychecks, but I asked my parents if I could use the family credit card and pay them back immediately, since I didn't have a credit card of my own yet. My father examined the jacket like it was made of gold, checking the price tag multiple times and asking me why I needed another jacket when I already had a winter coat. He made me walk around the store with him, looking for cheaper alternatives, eventually finding a similar jacket for $18 that was poorly made and unflattering. When I tried to explain that I preferred the original jacket and could pay for it myself, he told me I was being wasteful and materialistic, that I needed to learn the value of money and make practical choices. I returned the jacket I loved and bought the cheaper one, feeling ashamed of my desires and grateful that my father was teaching me important lessons about fiscal responsibility. 3 weeks later, I discovered that Emma had her own credit card. not a supplementary card that she could use for emergencies or specific purchases with permission. Her own credit card, linked to my father's account, with a $1,500 monthly limit that she could spend however she wanted without consultation or approval. I found out because she left her shopping bags in the car after a mall trip, and when I was helping carry groceries inside, I saw the receipts. $470 in a single afternoon on clothes she didn't need from stores I had never been allowed to enter. I confronted my mother first, thinking there must be some explanation I was missing. Maybe Emma had special circumstances. Maybe she was earning money I didn't know about. Maybe the credit card was for specific purposes that made sense within some larger family plan I didn't understand. My mother listened to my questions with an expression that moved from surprise to discomfort to something that looked almost like pity. She explained that Emma needed more financial support because she was social and active, that her activities required her to look presentable and confident, that investing in Emma's social development was an investment in her future success. When I pointed out that I also had social activities and college aspirations, my mother suggested that I was naturally more responsible with money and didn't need the same kind of support to make good choices. The conversation was a masterclass in gaslighting disguised as compliments. I was too responsible to need financial freedom. I was too practical to understand fashion and social dynamics. I was too mature to require the same kind of investment that Emma needed to develop her potential. Every positive trait my mother attributed to me was simultaneously an explanation for why I deserved less support, less investment, and fewer opportunities. I began paying attention to the financial patterns in our household with the intensity of an accountant preparing for an audit. Emma's monthly credit card statements averaged between $800 and $1,200, mostly on clothes, cosmetics, restaurant meals with friends, and entertainment. My monthly earnings from the bookstore were around $300, most of which went toward my own basic needs and college savings. But the disparity extended far beyond spending money. When Emma decided she wanted to attend summer camp in Colorado, my parents paid the $2,000 fee without hesitation. When I applied for a summer program at a local university that cost $400, my father suggested I should get a second job to pay for it myself, since I was always talking about being independent and responsible. When Emma's grades dropped junior year and she needed tutoring, my parents hired a private tutor at $60 per hour and paid for SAT prep courses that cost $800. When I was struggling with calculus and asked about getting help, my mother suggested I should ask my teacher for extra help during lunch periods, since I was smart enough to figure things out on my own. The college application season revealed the true scope of the financial inequality I had been experiencing. Emma applied to 12 schools, including several private colleges with application fees of $90 each. My parents paid all her fees, hired a college consultant to help with her essays, and took her on visits to 7 different campuses, including flights to 2 out-of-state schools. I was told I could apply to 4 schools, all in-state, and that I needed to pay my own application fees from my bookstore earnings. When I asked about visiting colleges, my father explained that I was mature enough to make decisions based on research and virtual tours, that I didn't need expensive campus visits to choose a good school. But I was 17 years old and still operating under the assumption that my parents' financial decisions reflected some kind of wisdom I didn't understand. I told myself that Emma needed more support because she was less capable of navigating challenges independently. I convinced myself that my parents were teaching me valuable lessons about self-reliance and financial responsibility. I believed that being treated differently meant I was trusted more, expected to rise to higher standards, appreciated for my strength and independence. The truth revealed itself gradually, then all at once during my freshman year of college. I had chosen a state school partly because of financial constraints and partly because I genuinely liked the program. I was working 20 hours a week in addition to carrying a full course load, sending money home to help with family expenses, and maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I felt proud of what I was accomplishing and grateful for the character-building challenges my parents had given me. Emma, meanwhile, had been accepted to a private college that cost $48,000 per year. My parents not only paid her full tuition, but also gave her a monthly allowance of $800 for personal expenses, bought her a new car to take to school, and furnished her dorm room with furniture that cost more than my entire first semester's expenses. During Thanksgiving break of my freshman year, I was home helping my mother prepare dinner when she made a comment that changed everything. She was talking about how proud she was of both her daughters, how Emma was thriving socially at her expensive college, and how I was proving that I could succeed anywhere with my work ethic and determination. Then she said something that she clearly thought was a compliment but felt like a knife through my chest. She told me that she and my father had always known I would be fine no matter what, that I was the kind of person who could make something good out of any situation, but that Emma needed more help and guidance to reach her potential. She said they had invested more in Emma because I was naturally successful, and Emma required more support to achieve the same level of accomplishment. I realized in that moment that my parents had been managing my life like a portfolio, giving resources to the investment that seemed riskier while assuming that the stable, reliable stock would continue producing returns with minimal input. I wasn't being prepared for independence and success. I was being systematically deprived of resources because my competence made me less expensive to maintain. The conversation continued, and my mother shared details about their financial planning that revealed the full scope of what had been happening. Emma's college education, including graduate school, was completely funded through a special account my parents had been contributing to since she was born. My education was expected to be funded through scholarships, loans, and my own earnings, because I was capable of making it work without family support. Emma would inherit the larger portion of family assets because she would need more financial security throughout her life. I would inherit less because I had proven I could build wealth independently. Emma would receive ongoing financial support for major life events like weddings, home purchases, and child rearing. I was expected to fund these milestones myself because I was responsible and wouldn't want to burden the family with requests for help. Every explanation my mother offered was presented as evidence of my strength and Emma's need, but the practical result was that my competence had made me financially disposable. My ability to succeed despite obstacles meant that my parents felt justified in creating obstacles for me while removing them for Emma. I spent the rest of that weekend in a state of emotional shock, remembering every moment of differential treatment with new understanding. The $30 jacket incident wasn't about teaching me fiscal responsibility. It was about maintaining a dynamic where Emma's desires were automatically validated, while mine were automatically questioned. The credit card wasn't about Emma needing more social support. It was about my parents investing in Emma's happiness while expecting me to generate my own. I returned to college with a completely different understanding of my family dynamics, but I didn't know what to do with this new knowledge. I was still financially dependent on my parents for basic support, still operating within a family system that presented inequality as love, still raised to believe that good daughters don't make demands or create conflict. The situation reached a crisis point during my sophomore year when Emma was suspended from her expensive college for academic probation and alcohol violations. Instead of allowing her to face consequences for her choices, my parents immediately hired lawyers to appeal the suspension, paid for additional tutoring and counseling services, and began researching transfer options to equally expensive schools. The same week Emma was suspended, I received a partial scholarship to participate in a summer research program at a prestigious university. The scholarship covered tuition and housing but not travel expenses or living costs. I needed $800 to participate in an opportunity that could have been transformative for my career prospects. When I asked my parents for help with the program expenses, my father told me that money was tight because of Emma's legal and academic issues, that I should be grateful for the partial scholarship I had received, and that if the program was really important to me, I would find a way to make it work financially. He suggested I could take out a small loan or ask other family members for help, since I was always so resourceful and independent. I calculated that my parents were spending approximately $15,000 to manage Emma's college crisis, legal fees, tutoring, application fees for transfer schools, and ongoing counseling services. I was asking for $800 to pursue an academic opportunity I had earned through my own merit and hard work. The contrast was so stark that I couldn't pretend not to see it anymore. I didn't attend the summer program, but I began keeping detailed records of every financial disparity I observed. Not because I was planning some kind of confrontation, but because I needed to document what was happening to maintain my own sense of reality. The gaslighting had been so consistent and sophisticated that I had learned to doubt my own perceptions of unfairness. Over the following year, I documented that Emma received approximately $18,000 in direct financial support beyond her tuition and basic living expenses. This included the legal fees for her college issues, a new laptop when she damaged her original one, a spring break trip to Mexico with friends, professional photography sessions for her social media presence, and ongoing monthly allowances that doubled whenever she claimed to be struggling financially. During the same period, I received $600 in family financial support, mostly in the form of emergency help when my car broke down and I couldn't afford repairs. I had asked for help twice and been told that money was tight, that I needed to budget better, and that part of becoming an adult was learning to handle unexpected expenses independently. I was working 25 hours per week while maintaining a 3.9 GPA, sending money home monthly to help with household expenses, and saving for graduate school applications. Emma was on academic probation at her second college, had never held a job, and was receiving more monthly financial support than I earned from my part-time employment. The breaking point came during my junior year when Emma decided she wanted to spend a semester studying abroad in Italy. The program cost $12,000 beyond regular tuition, plus travel expenses and living costs that would total approximately $20,000. My parents were not only willing to pay for this experience, but actively encouraged Emma to apply, describing it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for personal growth and cultural enrichment. The same month Emma was accepted to the Italy program, I received an opportunity to participate in a research conference in my field. The conference was a major networking opportunity that could have led to graduate school connections and potential career advancement. The total cost was $450 for registration, hotel, and travel. When I asked my parents for help with the conference expenses, my mother actually laughed and asked me why I thought they should pay for my professional development when I was perfectly capable of saving money for things that were important to me. She suggested that if the conference was really valuable, I should be willing to work extra shifts or sell some of my possessions to afford it. I attended the conference using money I had saved for textbooks and ate peanut butter sandwiches for 2 weeks afterward to make up for the expense. While I was presenting my research to professors who would later help me secure graduate school funding, Emma was posting Instagram photos from Italian restaurants and designer boutiques, all funded by my parents who considered her cultural exploration a worthwhile family investment. The inequality had become so extreme that I started wondering if I was adopted, or if there was some family secret that explained why I was treated so differently. I began asking subtle questions about family history, looking through old photographs, trying to understand whether there was some explanation for the differential treatment that made sense within a loving family dynamic. What I discovered was even more disturbing than what I had suspected. During a conversation with my grandmother, she mentioned how proud she was that my parents had been able to support both daughters through college, and how impressed she was that I had managed to excel academically while working so much to pay my own way. When I explained that my parents were paying Emma's full expenses while requiring me to fund my own education, my grandmother's expression changed to confusion and then concern. She told me that she had been sending my parents money for years, specifically to help with my college expenses, believing that they were struggling to support 2 daughters in higher education simultaneously. She had contributed over $8,000 during my first 3 years of college, money that I had never seen, and that had apparently been redirected to other family expenses or Emma's additional support. The revelation that my own grandmother's financial assistance had been diverted away from me was devastating, but it also provided clarity about the systematic nature of what had been happening. This wasn't about different parenting philosophies or Emma needing more support due to legitimate challenges. This was about my parents actively redistributing resources away from me and toward Emma, even when those resources were specifically intended for my benefit. I confronted my parents during winter break of my junior year, armed with documentation of the financial disparities and evidence of the diverted funds from my grandmother. I had prepared for the conversation for weeks, anticipating their explanations and ready to respond with specific examples and factual information. The conversation was worse than I had imagined possible. My father began by denying that there was any significant difference in how they treated Emma and me, claiming that they had always tried to be fair and meet each daughter's individual needs. When I presented evidence of the spending disparities, he shifted to explaining that Emma required more support because she was struggling academically and socially, that their investment in her was necessary to help her reach her potential. When I pointed out that I was excelling academically while working part-time and sending money home, my mother jumped in to explain that this proved I didn't need as much support, that I was clearly capable of handling challenges independently. She said they were proud of my self-reliance and didn't want to interfere with my development by offering help I didn't need. The gaslighting escalated when I mentioned the money from my grandmother. My father claimed that family financial decisions were complex and that I didn't understand all the factors involved in managing household expenses. My mother suggested that I was being ungrateful and selfish, focusing on money instead of appreciating the love and support they had provided in other ways. But the most devastating moment came when I asked them directly whether they loved Emma more than me, whether I was less important to them, whether my success and independence meant I deserved less investment and support. My father looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, not anger or frustration, but something like annoyance that I had forced him to articulate something he preferred to keep implicit. He told me that love wasn't about money, that I was being manipulative by framing financial decisions as indicators of affection. Then he said something that I will never forget, something that revealed the underlying philosophy that had governed my entire childhood and adolescence. He said that Emma needed more help because she was more vulnerable, and that I was strong enough to succeed without family support, so investing heavily in me would be wasteful when Emma required more resources to achieve similar outcomes. He said that good parents make strategic decisions about how to allocate limited resources to maximize both children's success, and that giving me equal financial support would have meant taking away Emma's chances for success. My mother nodded along with this explanation, and added that I should be grateful to have parents who recognized my strength and independence, that many families would have wasted money on me instead of recognizing that I was capable of creating my own opportunities. I realized in that moment that my parents viewed me as a resource rather than a person deserving of investment. My competence had made me financially disposable, my strength had been used to justify their neglect, and my success despite obstacles had been reframed as evidence that obstacles were good for me. I left that conversation knowing that I would never again ask my parents for financial support or expect equal treatment within our family system. But I also left with a clearer understanding of my own worth and capabilities than I had ever possessed before. Their explanation of why I deserved less had inadvertently revealed how much I had accomplished despite systematic disadvantage. The vindication began the following semester when I received a full scholarship for graduate school, including a stipend for living expenses and research funding. The scholarship was competitive and prestigious, awarded to students who had demonstrated exceptional academic achievement and research potential. The professor who supervised my selection told me that my combination of academic excellence and work experience made me an outstanding candidate, that my ability to succeed while supporting yourself financially demonstrated exactly the kind of independence and determination that would lead to success in graduate studies. I didn't tell my parents about the scholarship immediately. Instead, I spent several weeks researching the program, understanding the full scope of the opportunity, and preparing for the changes it would require. The scholarship was worth approximately $40,000 per year for 3 years, plus full tuition coverage and additional research funding. It was more financial support than my parents had provided during my entire undergraduate education. When I finally called to share the news, my parents' reaction was everything I had expected and nothing I had hoped for. They were pleased that I had received recognition for my hard work, but they immediately began planning how this opportunity could benefit Emma. My mother suggested that since I would be financially secure in graduate school, they could now focus more resources on Emma's final year of college and her post-graduation transition. My father asked whether the scholarship program had opportunities for Emma, whether I could help her network with professors in her field, whether my success might open doors for Emma's future applications to graduate programs. Neither parent asked about my research interests, my career goals, or how I felt about this achievement. The conversation was entirely focused on how my success could be leveraged to create opportunities for Emma. But the most revealing moment came when my mother mentioned that they wouldn't need to worry about my future anymore, since I had proven I could secure funding and support independently. She said it was such a relief to know that one daughter was set up for success, so they could concentrate their efforts on helping Emma find her path. I realized that my achievement had been instantly reframed as a reason to continue excluding me from family investment and support. Even when I succeeded beyond their expectations, the success became justification for why I needed them less rather than recognition that I had earned more. The conversation ended with my parents asking me to keep the scholarship news private until Emma graduated, since they didn't want her to feel pressured or compared to my achievements. They suggested that Emma was sensitive about academic competition and that sharing good news about my success might make her feel inadequate during her final semester. I agreed to keep the news private, but not because I wanted to protect Emma from feeling compared to me. I agreed because I was beginning to understand that my family's dynamics were so twisted that even my achievements were treated as potential threats to Emma's emotional well-being. Graduate school provided the physical and emotional distance I needed to process what had happened and begin building a life based on my own values rather than my family's distorted dynamics. I started therapy during my first semester, initially thinking I needed help managing the stress of advanced academic work, but quickly discovering that I needed help understanding how to have healthy relationships and realistic expectations of family support. My therapist helped me recognize that what I had experienced wasn't just favoritism or different parenting styles, but systematic emotional and financial abuse disguised as family dynamics. She explained that families often create scapegoat and golden child roles that serve the parents' emotional needs rather than the children's developmental needs, and that children in the scapegoat role often develop exceptional independence and resilience as survival mechanisms. But she also helped me understand that my competence and strength were real qualities that I had developed and demonstrated, not just reactions to family dysfunction. The skills I had developed, financial responsibility, academic excellence, emotional regulation, and professional networking, were valuable assets that would serve me throughout my life, regardless of how they had originated. Through therapy, I began to understand that my parents' explanation for treating me differently was actually a confession of their own limitations as parents. Good parents invest in all their children's potential, help all their children develop confidence and independence, and provide emotional and financial support based on love rather than strategic resource allocation. My parents had used my strength as an excuse for their neglect, but strength doesn't negate the need for love, support, and investment. High-achieving children deserve family encouragement and resources just as much as children who struggle academically or socially. Success doesn't mean someone no longer needs emotional support or financial assistance when appropriate. The therapy process also helped me recognize that I had been participating in my own marginalization by accepting my parents' explanations and trying to prove my worth through increasingly independent achievements. I had learned to expect less, ask for less, and be grateful for minimal support because I had been raised to believe that needing help was weakness and that strong people succeed alone. During my second year of graduate school, Emma graduated from college and moved back home while looking for employment. My parents continued to support her financially during this transition period, paying for her living expenses, car insurance, cell phone, and ongoing social activities while she explored various career options. The same semester, I was invited to present my research at an international conference, an opportunity that could have been significant for my career development, but required travel expenses that weren't covered by my scholarship. When I mentioned the conference to my parents, thinking they might be interested in my professional achievements, my father suggested that I should be able to afford conference attendance from my graduate stipend, since I was always talking about being financially independent. The contrast was so stark that I finally found the courage to address it directly. I told my parents that I had noticed Emma was receiving financial support during her job search, while I was expected to fund professional development from my graduate stipend. I explained that I wasn't asking for money, but I was asking them to recognize the inequality and explain why Emma's transition period required family support, while my career development was considered my individual responsibility. My mother responded by explaining that Emma was in a vulnerable transition period and needed temporary support while she got established in her career, while I was already established in graduate school with a clear path forward. She said that Emma's situation was temporary assistance, while mine was ongoing success that didn't require family intervention. But then my father said something that revealed the deeper truth about how they viewed my role in the family. He told me that I had always been the one who figured things out independently, that Emma had always needed more guidance and support, and that this dynamic had worked well for our family because it allowed them to focus their resources where they were most needed while knowing I would be successful regardless. He said that trying to change this dynamic now would be unfair to Emma, who had grown up expecting family support and would struggle without it, while I had grown up learning self-reliance and would be fine continuing to operate independently. He said that equality didn't mean treating different people the same way, but rather giving each person what they needed to succeed. The conversation was a perfect example of how psychological manipulation can be disguised as family wisdom and caring concern. Every point my father made sounded reasonable on the surface, but was actually an elaborate justification for continuing to allocate resources unequally while blaming me for noticing the disparity. I realized that my parents were never going to acknowledge the inequality or change their behavior, because doing so would require them to admit that they had been systematically disadvantaging one child while over-supporting another. It would require them to confront the possibility that their parenting had been driven by their own emotional needs rather than their children's best interests. More importantly, I realized that I didn't need their acknowledgement or approval to understand my own worth and build a successful life. I had already proven my capabilities through academic achievement, financial independence, and professional development. Their failure to recognize or support my achievements was information about their limitations, not mine. I made a decision during that conversation that changed the trajectory of my relationship with my family. I decided to stop asking for equal treatment and start living according to my own values and priorities. I stopped sharing professional achievements that they would minimize or redirect toward Emma's benefit. I stopped offering financial assistance to the family when they had expenses, since my contributions were taken for granted while Emma's needs were prioritized. Most importantly, I stopped accepting explanations for inequality that blamed my strength and competence. I began responding to their reasoning with simple statements that reflected my own understanding of healthy family dynamics. When they explained that I didn't need support because I was independent, I replied that independent people still deserve family encouragement and assistance when appropriate. When they said Emma needed more help because she was struggling, I pointed out that successful people also benefit from family investment and recognition. I didn't argue or try to convince them to change their perspective, but I also didn't accept their explanations as legitimate or allow them to continue the conversation as if I agreed with their reasoning. This shift in my responses seemed to make them uncomfortable in a way that my previous arguments and evidence had not. The dynamic reached a breaking point during my third year of graduate school when I was selected for a prestigious fellowship that included international research opportunities and significant career advancement potential. The fellowship was highly competitive and represented exactly the kind of achievement that my parents had always claimed to value and support. When I called to share the news, my parents were appropriately congratulatory, but within minutes of hearing about the fellowship, my mother began asking whether the program had opportunities for recent graduates, whether Emma might be able to apply for similar programs, and whether I could help Emma network with international researchers in her field. I interrupted the conversation and told my mother that I had called to share personal news about my own achievement and that I wanted to talk about my research and career plans rather than how my success could benefit Emma. I said that Emma was welcome to pursue her own professional development opportunities, but that my fellowship was about my work and my future. My mother seemed surprised by my response and explained that she hadn't meant to diminish my achievement, but that it was natural for family members to help each other and share opportunities. She said that Emma was struggling to find direction in her career and that my connections and experience could be valuable resources for her. I told my mother that I was willing to share general advice about graduate school applications and career development, but that I wasn't willing to continue conversations where my achievements were immediately reframed as resources for Emma's benefit. I explained that this pattern had been happening for years and that it made me feel like my success was only valuable to the family insofar as it could be leveraged to help Emma. The conversation became tense when my father joined in and accused me of being selfish and unsupportive toward my sister. He said that family members should naturally want to help each other succeed, and that my attitude was disappointing and contrary to the values they had tried to teach me. I told my father that I had been helping and supporting family members for years, often at significant personal cost, but that the expectation of help seemed to flow only in one direction. I pointed out that Emma had never been asked to share her opportunities or resources with me, that she had never been expected to sacrifice her own interests for my benefit, and that the value of mutual support seemed to apply only when I was the one being asked to provide it. This response triggered the most honest conversation I had ever had with my parents about our family dynamics. My father admitted that they had different expectations for Emma and me based on our different personalities and capabilities, but he insisted that these differences were natural and appropriate rather than unfair or harmful. He said that I had always been the responsible one who could handle challenges independently, while Emma had always been more social and creative but less practical and organized. He explained that their parenting had been tailored to each daughter's needs and strengths, giving Emma more practical support while giving me more independence and responsibility. When I asked him why independence was considered a gift while practical support was considered necessity, he struggled to provide a coherent answer. When I pointed out that creative and social people also benefit from learning responsibility and independence, while practical and organized people also benefit from receiving support and investment, he became defensive and said I was overanalyzing family dynamics that had worked well for everyone involved. But the most revealing moment came when I asked my parents whether they thought Emma would be capable of succeeding if she received the same level of support I had received, and whether they thought I might have achieved even more if I had received the same level of support they provided to Emma. Both parents immediately said that Emma would not be able to handle the independence and responsibility I had been given, that she needed more guidance and financial support to reach her potential. But when I asked about the second part of the question, whether additional support might have enhanced my achievements, they insisted that I had reached my natural potential and that more support would not have made a significant difference. I realized that my parents had created a self-serving narrative where Emma's needs justified extensive support while my capabilities justified relative neglect, and where any question of this dynamic was framed as selfishness or failure to appreciate my own strengths. I told my parents that I was proud of what I had accomplished and grateful for the independence and resilience I had developed, but that I was no longer willing to accept explanations for inequality that treated my success as evidence that I needed less love, support, and investment from my family. I explained that I would be moving forward with my career and personal life based on my own values and priorities, that I would maintain respectful relationships with family members, but would not continue participating in dynamics that treated my achievements as resources for others while minimizing my own needs and interests. The conversation ended with my parents expressing disappointment in my attitude and concern that I was creating unnecessary conflict within our family. They suggested that I was allowing graduate school stress to affect my perspective on family relationships, and that I should consider whether my new independence was making me less appreciative of the love and support I had always received. This response confirmed everything I had learned about the dynamics that had shaped my childhood and adolescence. My growing self-respect and boundary setting were being pathologized as stress and ingratitude, while the inequality I had experienced was being reframed as love and support I had failed to appreciate. I ended the conversation by thanking my parents for the independence and resilience they had helped me develop, and by explaining that I would be using those qualities to build a life based on mutual respect and reciprocal support, rather than one-sided sacrifice and conditional love. Over the following months, I gradually reduced my contact with my parents and began building relationships with people who valued my achievements, respected my boundaries, and offered the kind of mutual support that healthy relationships require. I continued to love my family and wish them well, but I stopped participating in dynamics that required me to minimize my own needs and maximize their comfort. The vindication I had been seeking from my parents came instead from my professional achievements, my healthy relationships, and my own growing understanding of my worth and capabilities. The fellowship led to research opportunities that established my reputation in my field, opened doors to career positions I had never imagined possible, and connected me with mentors who became genuine advocates for my success. More importantly, therapy and distance from family dysfunction helped me recognize that the qualities my parents had used to justify neglecting me, independence, resilience, academic achievement, and financial responsibility, were actually valuable strengths that made me an excellent friend, partner, and professional colleague. I learned that healthy relationships involve people who celebrate your success rather than immediately calculating how it can benefit them, who offer support during challenges rather than explaining why you should handle difficulties alone, and who invest in your growth and happiness because they care about your well-being rather than because you provide them with services or resources. Today, I am 35 years old and have built a career I love, financial security I earned, and relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care. My parents and I maintain cordial contact, but I no longer seek their approval or expect equal treatment within our family system. Emma and I have developed a relationship as adults that is separate from our family dynamics, based on our individual connection rather than the roles we were assigned in childhood. She has gradually become more aware of the differential treatment we experienced and has expressed regret about how family resources were allocated, though we both understand that neither of us was responsible for our parents' choices. The most important thing I learned from this experience is that your worth is not determined by how much your family invests in you, how much support they offer, or how much they celebrate your achievements. Your worth is inherent and demonstrated through your own actions, choices, and character. If you are the responsible one in your family, the one who figures things out independently, the one who succeeds despite limited support, that doesn't mean you deserve less love, investment, or celebration. It means you have developed valuable qualities that will serve you throughout your life, but it doesn't mean you should accept neglect or inequality as appropriate treatment. Strength doesn't negate the need for love and support. Independence doesn't mean you should be expected to succeed alone. Achievement doesn't mean you no longer deserve encouragement and investment from people who claim to care about you. You deserve relationships where your success is celebrated rather than minimized, where your needs are considered rather than dismissed, and where your worth is recognized rather than taken for granted. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not just for what you can provide or how little you require. If you recognize your own experience in this story, I want you to know that the qualities that made you the responsible one, the independent one, the one who figures things out alone, are real strengths that will serve you well in building the life you want. But you also deserve to be loved, supported, and invested in, and there are people in this world who will appreciate your strength while also offering you the care and respect you deserve. You don't have to accept less because you're capable of handling it. You don't have to be grateful for neglect disguised as character building. You don't have to minimize your own needs to accommodate other people's limitations. You are worth more than how you were treated, and you deserve better than what you received. Your story doesn't end with how your family saw you or what they were willing to invest in your success. Your story continues with how you choose to see yourself and what you decide to build with the strength, independence, and resilience you've developed. If this story resonated with you, please share your experiences in the comments. Have you experienced financial favoritism in your family? How did you learn to recognize and respond to inequality disguised as different parenting styles? What helped you build confidence in your own worth despite receiving less support or investment than other family members? Your story matters, your experience is valid, and you deserve relationships that reflect your true worth. Thank you for listening to mine.